I told you Sophie Cunningham was going to be the next target. I've been telling you guys for weeks. Sophie would take the role of Caitlin Clark as public enemy number one in the WNBA dump. And yesterday was the first attack.
The Sophie Cunningham controversy just exploded again. And this time, the criticism is not coming from fans booing her inside a WNBA arena. It is coming from Mariah Rose, who launched into a brutal public rant aimed directly at the Indiana Fever Guard. Rose accused Sophie of pandering to Republicans, mocked the nickname MAGA Barbie, attacked her recent appearances outside basketball, and then went straight after the argument Sophie has been making about protecting girls and women in sport.
In vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
And suddenly, a debate that was already following Sophie Cunningham from city to city has become even more personal, because Sophie has made one thing very clear over the past few weeks. She is not backing down. The controversy started after Cunningham spoke publicly about transgender participation in women's sports. Sophie said she wanted to protect young girls in sport and argued that they should not have to compete against what she described as biological men.
Do you see your advocacy on that, like taking any form going forward?
You know, I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am. And I think people are going to take it how they want to take it, but I've never even really said anything about that. And so when it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports weren't protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so I think in the future, it's just really important to protect.
Then when reporters gave her another opportunity to explain herself, she doubled down. "I said what I said," Cunningham told reporters. She called her position kind of common sense and said she would continue standing by her beliefs. But Sophie also pushed back against the idea that her position meant she hated transgender people. She said she wanted to extend love, while arguing that love also meant being honest about what she believed was fair for female athletes.
You know, like I said, I extend love, and I don't dislike anyone. Like, I think there is room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone. And I truly think when you get people in the same room and you have conversations, you actually have a lot in common with a lot of people. And so I'm there to love, but I'm also there to love biological women, and I think that there are rights that need to be protected. And like I said, I'm going to stand true to that. I'll never falter in my beliefs in that, but I have never once said I hated the trans community. Like I said, I think there's space for everyone.
That distinction has done almost nothing to calm the storm. Instead, the reaction has grown. Sophie has been booed on the road. Demonstrations have appeared around Fever games. Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve publicly pushed back against the way Cunningham framed the issue, particularly the suggestion that transgender girls or women represent a threat inside locker rooms.
It is not the case that we have, quote, biological men in girls' locker rooms. The way it's being phrased, the innuendo there that somehow transgender women are predators of some kind in the locker room. There's a lot of narrative that is problematic that we need to address. That is simply not what's happening. Whether it's, cisgender men that have held us down for years in spaces like being able to have access to facilities and uniforms and locker rooms, all the things that these young girls that are sitting at games with anti-trans signs, do they understand actually what their real problems are?
Even Megan Rapinoe entered the conversation and criticized Cunningham's position.
They're going after trans people in sports, and they're using this as a wedge issue because we love sports and, we don't want our little girls to be unsafe in sports. And it's like, unsafe from who? But okay. Yeah. But now we're using this as like an overarching thing when really what we're attacking women. We're saying, if you look like this as a woman, you can play. We know what that means. Black girls are going to get questioned more, and they're going to get questioned first.
But now Mariah Rose has taken the criticism in a completely different direction. Rose did not simply challenge Sophie's argument. She attacked the entire image surrounding her. According to the post circulating online, Rose said, "Your nickname is MAGA Barbie. You pander to Republicans all Fing Day. You running around playing ring girl, and you talking about some Fing protect girls." That is an extraordinary attack, because Rose is essentially arguing that Sophie's recent public persona makes her message about protecting women difficult to take seriously. But there is another layer to this story. Sophie herself has rejected the idea that MAGA Barbie accurately describes her politics. She has said she is very much in the middle, agreeing with some things on both sides and disagreeing with others. Reporting around the controversy has also noted that Sophie believes people make political assumptions about her because of her appearance and where she comes from.
I really don't care. I know that sounds bad, and I'm not trying to come off like that, but I do think, everyone always is coming at it as a negative. Well, me coming out with that, there's so many people who are coming out with the positive, saying, you know what, finally someone has said something, and I don't really look at either side of those, because I know whatever I say, I'm going to get hate and I'm going to get love, and if I'm going to live by the love, I'm going to die by the hate, and that's just not who I am. I beat to my own drum, and so people are always going to have something to say. You could win the championship, you could be the best at whatever it is, and there's still people who are going to hate on you, and so that's just what this world is. So I'm confident in who I am. I'm proud of who I am. I'm happy being me, and I'm going to continue to be that.
So Rose is attacking Sophie based partly on an identity that Sophie says other people created for her. And that is exactly why this feud could become even bigger, because we are no longer simply talking about transgender participation in sport. We are talking about what Sophie Cunningham represents. To her supporters, Sophie has become an athlete willing to say something controversial and accept the consequences. To her critics, she has become a celebrity, using a highly sensitive issue to build a political brand. Those are two completely different versions of the same person, and every new confrontation appears to push people further toward one side. The White House even publicly praised Cunningham's position last month, adding another political dimension to a story Sophie insists should not automatically define her as Republican or MAGA.
Sophie Cunningham in the WNBA has been attacked as a MAGA Barbie for saying it's common sense for men to not be in women's sports in the locker room. Is the president following this story, and has he reached out to her?
I don't believe he has reached out to her. I know he is following the story. This is something the president feels strongly about as well, and the American people do too. Sophie Cunningham, a female athlete herself, very accomplished in her own right, coming forth and speaking that truth that men shouldn't play in women's sports. We want to protect women and girls, and the backlash she is receiving from Democrats and left-wing figures across the country is astonishing. They are clearly very out of touch with the American public on this issue, which again is an 80-20 issue. It's common sense. It's rooted in basic biological fact that men should not be competing against women on playing fields across the country.
Think about how quickly this escalated. Sophie gives an interview. The comments go viral. She doubles down. Political figures respond. Fans start protesting outside games. Opposing crowds boo her. Cheryl Reeve publicly pushes back. Megan Rapinoe criticizes her. And now Mariah Rose unloads on her personally. Meanwhile, Sophie keeps playing basketball in the middle of all of it. And somehow, the controversy surrounding her only keeps getting louder. That is what makes her response so important now, because Sophie has already shown that pressure does not necessarily make her retreat. When asked whether the controversy surrounding her had become a distraction for Indiana, she said she wasn't concerned about it. She has repeatedly framed her position around being authentic. Essentially, if people disagree with her, they disagree with her. She does not appear interested in changing her beliefs simply because the reaction is uncomfortable. And that means Rose's attack could actually produce the opposite effect. Instead of silencing Sophie, it could make Sophie dig in even harder. And there is another reason this story is unlikely to disappear. The WNBA itself sits right in the middle of the debate. The league has historically supported LGBTQ+ causes, while Cunningham is now one of its most recognizable players publicly challenging transgender participation in women's competition. That creates tension every single time Indiana walks into another arena. The basketball becomes only part of the story. People are watching the crowd reaction. They're watching what opposing players say. They're watching what coaches wear. They're watching Sophie. And now they're watching to see whether she answers Mariah Rose. Because if Sophie responds directly, this could become one of the nastiest public feuds surrounding the WNBA this season. But even if she says nothing, the attack highlights something much bigger. Sophie Cunningham has become one of the most polarizing players in women's basketball, not because she is leading the league in scoring, not because she is competing for MVP, but because people have attached something much larger to her name. Politics, culture, women's rights, transgender rights, free expression, fairness in sport. And everyone seems to have an opinion. Mariah Rose clearly has hers. Sophie Cunningham clearly has hers. And neither side appears interested in pretending this disagreement doesn't exist. So now the question becomes, does Sophie respond? Does she ignore Rose completely and continue repeating the same message? Or does this finally become the moment where Cunningham decides enough is enough and fires back? Because judging by everything we've seen from Sophie Cunningham recently, backing down does not seem to be her style.